Hello, can you hear me in the back? Okay, sure. So in the last class, you guys have studied about diffusion model and some of its applications. Also talked about latent diffusion models. So in this talk, we'll discuss the applications of diffusion models and how can we use them for image editing and image generation tasks. So yeah, this is some index. We'll talk about personalization, some applications in image editing. Can we use the diffusion model to perform depth prediction? How can we use these models for 3D generation, and some of the applications along the lines of diffusion transformers? Can you use them for protein folding, human motion generation, and so on and so forth? So any one of you have heard of Dream Booth? Dream Booth? Okay, so the basic idea is we have 3 to 5 images of a object. Here this is a dog. We want to learn that dog as a concept in the stable diffusion, and we want to generate multiple variations of that. Earlier we saw you can generate realistic images by putting just some text prompt, a photo of a dog doing something, but it will just generate some random dog. I don't want any random dog, I want to generate this particular dog. It will be really helpful for advertisement and other kind of purposes. So that's why this field of personalization of diffusion models is very popular nowadays. There are lots of works which kind of fine-tune the base diffusion model on this concept, and now you can generate this concept wherever you want. So for instance, you can see you can generate that dog as swimming, sleeping, and so on and so forth. You can see the identity of the dog also is well preserved. So how does this work? We have this text-to-image model. You can think of this as a stable diffusion model, pre-trained on billions of images and text pairs. If you give a text prompt, it will generate some image. Along with that, we have 3 to 5 images of this dog. Right? Now we want to personalize this model, essentially fine-tune that model, such that it generates this dog as well as preserves all the previous properties. Right? So it knows how to generate Eiffel Tower, for instance. If you naively fine-tune this model on these few images, it can directly overfit and it will not generate anything new. It will just generate that dog. To that end, what these guys propose is to learn a new unique token representing that subject. So this is the V star token. You can think of this as a unique embedding in the text vector space. Okay, so you have a full text of a, let's say, a dog in the beach. You will have vector embedding for each of the words. Now you have another special embedding which is called V, and along with this, if you pass it, you want to generate the same dog, and you want to, if you want to generate new compositions, you can just use this V everywhere wherever you are using dog, add that V, and you should be able to generate that. So they do it in 2 stages. First, they fine-tune this model by adding this token in the text prompt. So you will add a V dog in the beach, and you will use these 3 images to fine-tune the model. Right? If you naively fine-tune, as I mentioned, it will overfit and it will not generate anything else. So you add additional prior preservation loss, in which what you do is you pass normal prompts of a photo of dog in the beach without the V token and generate few images of that. You will use those images as a regularizer. Okay, so you will train with this prompt as well as another prompt where without V. Okay, and with the combination of these 2 prompts, you train the model, and it turns out you can do that with like only a very small number of training iterations, with only 2000 iterations or so. Your V token kind of associates to this particular dog. Once you are able to do that, then you can generate novel compositions. For example, like this. You can use the same V embedding. So wherever you are putting a text, you will inject another embedding which you have learned here, and then it will generate your personalized outputs. Any questions in this? Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is, if you just train it with this prompt of V photo doing, V dog doing something with your 3 to 5 images, the model will overfit to these images. Right? It will only generate these images because the model has so many parameters, and it will very small data points you have. So to overcome that, you will say a photo of dog without that V token and generate some images. Okay, so that will be some random dog because the model is not fine-tuned yet. So it will just generate random dogs. You will use those images along with these 3 to 5 images to train the model. So the other images will help it to preserve the dog as a concept And this new V token will help it to associate the V identity of the new dog with V. Okay.
So here we are doing supervision training.
Yeah, supervised
so
training.
The 5 images will be the, so like for example a dog in the beach means I need to have a dog in the beach.
Yeah, so usually they just train it with normal prompt, a V dog, without putting anything. And it's assumed there's not much background information in these images.
So and for the negative examples, when you say regularization, how do you do it here? Like you expect an image, like you remove V, you will get a new prompt, and then you get the image based on that.
Yeah, something like this. So on bottom, in the bottom you can see a dog. Like you will generate some natural images. On top you have a V dog. So this is like pre-trained model. So it will generate variety of dogs, not your specific dog. Now you will have the shared weight and then you will put a class preservation loss. So whenever you say this is your fine-tuned model, these two are pre-trained model. You will start with a dog and then you will say in the previous model whatever I prompted it with a dog, the images I have, these two should be similar. Okay. So these dotted ones are essentially used to preserve the dog as a concept. Okay, these two are pre-trained and fixed, and this is getting trained.
But while you were actually doing means inference step, you will not say that dog right, a V dog right, you will say dog only.
No, in fifth time you will say a V dog. That's what we have seen here, right? A V dog in the beach, a V dog walking on. Because you want to generate that particular dog. V is essentially capturing the identity of this particular dog. Sorry? So you have to train the V. The V is getting trained. So it will have another V. Yeah.
So how do we make it sort of easier for the end user, given that he or she doesn't know what the embedding for that dog is? So
Yeah, that's what the V is also getting learned here.
yeah. So but will the end user have this embedding finally?
So me as a user, if I want to generate personalized version of my dog, I will have 3 to 5 images. I will fine tune the model. Then I will prompt it with a V dog, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's what it's computationally heavy thing. You have to fine tune the model for each of the concept. Yeah. Interactable, is it? Yeah. So it's not generalized thing. It's the opposite to that. Personalizing on your particular concept. So there are some limitations, obviously. Like for each object, you have to retrain the model, and later people have kind of figured out how to do that without retraining. Yeah. So yeah, these are some of the examples. You can see given 4 images of this sunglasses. You can generate that sunglass in any composition, right? And more or less the identity is well preserved. Sometimes it's little bit off. But it does follow the text prompt. The idea is it should follow the text prompt as well as the identity should match with the input image.
You have to keep the label with the image also, like the sunglasses, you have to say it's a sunglasses.
Yeah, the class name you have to give, like a V sunglasses, something. So this is another example where you have bag images, and then you can generate lots of variations of that bag.
Kind of Photoshop kind of thing, keeping the tag wherever we require.
Yeah, so in Photoshop what you will do is you will crop this thing and paste it directly. It will not generate pose variations and stuff. But if you see there are different poses which don't directly match this one. Even for eyeglasses I think it's better. So sometimes it's tilted and so on. But yeah, like something like that. So yeah, so that was one of the similar work on personalization, Dream Booth. So this is one work from our lab where we extended it to personalize human faces. So human faces are much more interesting, and then you have very nuanced details on the face. Like if you miss little bit, the identity will be completely changed. You will not recognize the person. So how to do that for human faces and without extensive tuning, as we discussed. Like earlier we had to fine tune the full model. Can we do it in a much more efficient way? So this is the problem setting. So you will say a photo of a person playing guitar. It will generate something like this, pre-trained model. However, we want to do something like this. I want to input only a single image, not 3 to 5 images, and adapt this text to image model such that it should generate that person in novel variation. So for example, here it is like the person is playing guitar. You can see the identity is kind of matching. So again, coming back to Dream Booth, if we apply Dream Booth as it is directly for faces, it has several issues. First of all, it does not allow for fine-grained attribute editing. For example, you invert a face, now you want to change the facial attributes, like making the person smile a little bit or adding eyeglasses. All those things are not possible directly with Dream Booth. Second is identity loss. As I mentioned, the faces are very, like they have lots of details, and if you miss little bit, you will not recognize the person as the same person. In dogs, it looks same, but if you put a face image, it will miss out on that. Again, like it requires 3 to 5 images and expensive fine-tuning of the base model. So we solved all of these things specifically for the task of face personalization. So again, the idea is very similar in a broader sense. Given this input image, we convert it into some token embedding, V-star. I'll tell how we have done that. But once you have that V-star, you can put it in any prompt, and then you should be able to generate novel compositions. Something like this. V-star debugging code in an office cubicle. Right? So this is overview of latent diffusion models. Like last time we have, I think you guys have seen this. You start with ZT, complete noise, iteratively denoising to get to the generated image. You have a unit which denoises these images at each time step, and then you have a text prompt to condition these models for conditional generation. So the text is first passed through a tokenizer that will give you embedding for each of the words, and then you have a text encoder that will combine all these embeddings together and injects it into the unit model. Right? So your generation, or essentially your denoising, is happening on the conditioning of the text prompt. This is a basic stable diffusion vanilla setup. We proposed an encoder model that directly predicts the V-star from a single image. Okay, we will discuss how this encoder is trained. Let's say we have some encoder that can project the image into the token embedding space, and now you have the identity information bottlenecked in that V-star. You will use that V-star anywhere in any of the prompts, and it will generate those variations. Now let's go inside this, how to train this encoder. Any guesses? How can we train such an encoder model? Yeah, you can. So it's trainable if you keep the same code. Yeah, same architecture. Okay, if you even copy the same architecture, what will be the loss functions? How will you train this model? Architecture is okay. There's some function there.
When I look, like first provide the input image,
Yeah,
V-star, like predict V-star, go there and then generate the image.
right.
Now go back to the, like you can, I think you have to make sure you generate the image input, like you can go back and denoise. No, sorry.
So
Extract the faces and then combine, like apply mean square loss or something for the face loss.
yeah, so how diffusion training happens? Anyone?
You add noise in the.
So do you add noise till the last time step during training, or do you just sample something, add noise and denoise for just one time step?
So if you are using like DDIM and DDP in the class.
Yeah.
In DDIM, like you can predict the noise, given x0, you predict the noise till the t step.
Yeah.
And then DDPM, you just do the.
Okay, okay.
That's what last class.
I see. Sure. So it's something like that. You start from the image space, get the V-star, condition, generate some image, then you can put a loss, right? One way is to go it for all the time steps and then put the loss in the end, but it will be computationally very heavy. Like you will do 50 time steps and then you will backpropagate.
How will you put the loss? You don't know what's the generated image, right?
You have the generated image.
No, but what's the target?
Yeah, you will use the same image as the target. So it's a self-supervised kind of training.
Okay, but
So finally what you want, there the person should match this person, right?
then the setting will be different, right? Let's suppose this input image has no guitar. And in the
Exactly. So there are some other regularization losses for that. Okay? Yeah, I have that. So one is standard diffusion loss, which is noising, denoising. So you add noise, you predict the denoise thing. You backprop, this is fixed, only this is getting trained. backprop and update this one. Another one is identity loss, which is much more important. What we want there is the identity of that person should match to the identity. So how to put such a loss? We crop the face from there. It will be approximately human face, like we pass it through a face detector, crop the face and pass it through face recognition network. We'll get a feature vector that represents the identity of the face. Similarly, we do the same thing for the input. We compare those two face identities in the higher dimensional space and backprop. So that's give you some regularization in that sense. We are not only overfitting to this image. The identity should match. And the third loss is again additional regularization loss where this V star token should be close to the person token, okay, in the full semantic space. If you don't regularize it, it will just overfit to one image. However, what we want is this identity should represent all the faces somewhere in between the face, wherever the face is represented in that embedding space.
So V star is the feature vector of output of the face detector. Like that should match.
V star is the embedding of the face, but the face recognition, it's not shown here. You have another encoder. Let's say it is called G star. You compare G star of this one and this one.
That is the identity loss.
Yeah.
The third loss that we're talking.
Yeah. So third loss is about this V person token. We try to keep these two close.
It should not be unique one, it should be close to person so that any person will come, it replaces that person's face instead of replacing this guy's face.
Yeah. So during inference we will do that. If you don't put that regularization loss, it will only generate cropped up faces. If I say this person standing in front of Eiffel Tower, it should understand this V star represents a person. Otherwise, it will just overfit to the cropped image.
So you're specifically keeping it close to person.
Yes. Because all the persons are there and whatever things the persons do, like a person standing, walking, we want to just replace the face. So the face information is coming from V star, but the person thing is coming from a V person. Yeah.
So it will replace the person and put the star at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can do like the V star should be close to embedding of face. Why are we-
Yeah, so face is nothing, like it's a human being finally. We want to use the identity in different compositions, so that's why we put.
Yeah, you are just saying that we have to put a regularization.
Yeah, to keep it close. Otherwise, if you just put the first loss, it will overfit to the faces, the input data set that you use to train, and it will not generate novel compositions. Yeah, I'll come to that. Okay, once done this, you should be able to generate, once this is trained, you'll pass a new image, get its embedding V star, and combine it with prompt, generate new compositions. Now, on top of that, we wanted to have additional control. So, last time also, I think you guys have control in generation was discussed to some extent. You are generating an image with text prompt, but text is very coarse. How to get much more richer or fine-grained control. Here we focused on attribute control. For example, this image, I have learned the V star and generated this composition, V star in Santa Claus hat and something. Now I want to increase the smile of the person, keeping everything else fixed. One way is you can just put it in text, like V star smiling, V star more smiling and so on. But it will change the background because it is generating from scratch, complete noise to generation. We want something like this, localized control. You can see only the mouth region is getting changed, background is well preserved, identity is well preserved, all the other attributes are well preserved. So how to achieve such a fine-grained control? And you need a continuous control, like a knob kind of thing, right? You can rotate the knob, increase the intensity of the edit and reduce it. So this is very helpful for artists and designers because once they create something, they don't want to scratch it and again do that. They have generated something, they want to do just minor modifications on the design and build on top of that iteratively. So just a recap about, so GANs was discussed, right? You understand the basic concept of GAN. You have a latent space, you map it to the image space. Sometimes the latent space is very smooth. You can interpolate between latent space to get something meaningful. Okay, so this is one specific GAN. We use the GAN model, some of the interesting properties from GAN and integrated into diffusion model. Okay, so this is style GAN. What happens is in usual GANs, what happens? You have Z sampled from normal distribution and directly you have a generator network, which is a set of deconvolutional layers that will generate an image. That's the standard GAN. In StyleGAN, what happens is you have another small neural network in between, which is called mapping network, that projects your Z into W space. This is a flattened vector, okay? And this W vectors are used to condition the generation. So this is your generator model, but the generator is conditioned by this W instead of Z directly. The idea is if you do like this, if you train a model like this, this W space automatically aligns in such a manner such that your data is very well reconstructed, and there are some semantically meaningful properties of that. So in Z space, it's a fixed distribution, standard Gaussian, but this distribution is learnable. Okay, it's learned on your data distribution. You will train it with, let's say, 100,000 face images. This space will get learned, both the models will get learned, and then you can use this space, which turns out to be semantically very meaningful for multiple controllable generation tasks. So this is interpolation in the W space. So what we are doing is you take W1, W2, linearly interpolate between W1 and W2 and generate all the images for the linear interpolation. So you can see the transitions are very smooth. It's not directly jumping from one image to other image to third image. They are smoothly getting interpolated. Right? So these properties are present in this W plus space. Okay. So how can we use this space for our diffusion model? Because this already shows we can do slider kind of thing. You can change the hairstyles or add smile if you move in the W space, right? But this is limited to StyleGANs. The problem with StyleGANs is it is only trained on cropped up faces and only faces. So you cannot generate anything else. Like you cannot add a text prompt or even generate a full body human. That's not possible. Any idea how can we use this along with the diffusion model? Sorry? Okay. Right. Yeah.
I can use that, let's say like personalized diffusion model to generate synthetic images and use those synthetic images to train the StyleGAN.
So we don't, the goal is not to train the StyleGAN. Even if you generate lots of synthetic images with text prompt and train the StyleGAN, it will not generate. So the problem with StyleGANs or GAN models are they cannot generalize beyond one category. So even if you train with diverse data, people have put efforts to that, it will collapse. It will not generate all the variations.
Can you go to the previous slide?
Yeah. This one?
So here, like, let's so we have a pre-trained like precise control or anything that can generate based on the
First image, yeah.
and then we can start changing the knob that we want, like the smile. Like
Yeah, but where will the knob exist? Which space?
These are, so we will do the text. We will update that smile to smile.
Exactly. If you do that,
And then you map that to a W and use that to generate. And now you have a training pairs where for each smile, now you have a W that is trained. Because at the end, if I have a W that is trained, I can walk it. Like I can transition.
correct.
But here, so that's the, I think, understood. I got.
Yeah, but if you just directly put it in the text prompt, it will not preserve the things. That's the idea. It will completely change the person.
Other prompt also. Like this, everything else. Okay, you are saying the background will start changing.
Everything will change because it's a complete stochastic process, right? You are doing 50. If that was solved by text prompt, we don't need any of these. It can natively generate with just text edits. Yeah.
Maybe we can do DDIM inversion and then walk the noise space like we're walking the noise space in the.
Correct. So the problem with that is this space is just 5 and 2 dimensional. Okay. Whereas the noise space will be like H cross W, which is huge. So it turns out it is not that smooth. You cannot linearly interpolate in that noise space. Okay. So yeah, I'll give you the answer. It's something in the encoder design. Okay. So the encoder that we have, we design it as a part of as a combination of two modules. One is StyleGAN encoder, another one is a mapper network. So what StyleGAN encoder does is it takes this input image and projects it into W plus space. It's very easy to train an encoder on top of StyleGAN. You have a StyleGAN generator, you can think of it as a decoder you will train another additional module as an encoder that maps image to W. You go W to image and put a input output loss. Okay, standard auto encoder stuff. Okay, so if you do that, you will have a StyleGAN encoder which maps any image to the W plus space. But keep in mind, it will only map the cropped up face images. It will not map anything else because your StyleGAN does not generate anything else. So, yeah, once you do that, you have this W plus space, which is already smooth and useful for editing. Now the thing is, you don't want to train the StyleGAN encoder because if it is getting also trained, your W plus properties will get disturbed. Right? So you don't want to do that. So that is frozen. You only train a small latent mapper that projects the W plus to your V star. Okay. So now during inference, what you will do is you will pass an input image through the StyleGAN encoder, get a W. You will do latent editing in the W. So let's say in W space there exist directions to edit one attribute at a time. In StyleGAN, people have shown there are lots of works around that. You can find a direction to edit. Like we saw some interpolations, right? It's very smooth. So you can use the same space to perform edits. For example, adding a beard. So you have a direction for beard already, and then you have a strength for beard, how much you want to add. You get a edited W. This is a W star. You pass it through that latent mapper that will give you edited V star. Okay? And when you pass the edited V star with the prompt, a photo of V star on the bench, you will generate something like this. If you don't edit the latent, you will generate something like this. Yeah, we are changing the V star, and inherently we are changing the W.
How do we know what D and
Yeah, so it is coming from existing works because it's already there in the W plus space. So research has been done in StyleGAN's W plus space. You can easily find directions for attribute editing. So we use those directions as it is.
D is a vector, right? W is a vector.
Yeah.
So D is also that.
D is also the same dimensional vector.
So each dimension might corresponding to this
Vector.
This directions, and beard corresponding to this direction
Yeah.
is already there.
Already there. But it's just for StyleGANs, cropped up faces.
How did they find it?
So I will give some papers to you, you can read it. It's very simple. Like, already the space is very smooth, so you can do that very easily.
Making V-star embedding space more with this style.
Exactly. So now even though it's trained with cropped up faces, you can generate varied combination and even change the attributes. So these are some of the interesting results. Given the single input image, we are able to generate these many combinations, and you can see the identity is quite well preserved. Even though it is trained with just cropped up faces, it can generate far away people doing different actions. So you can, this is for the 2-person case, you learn V1 star, V2 star, put them in the, yeah. Yeah, here it's not required. We change the formulation because anyway we are putting it close to the V person embedding, so it kind of works. So this is for 2-person, you learn V1 star, V2 star, and we did something more on to make it work, that's in the paper, but essentially you can generate compositions of 2 people doing things which was not possible earlier. So this one is specifically for human faces, but there are other works that compose multiple different objects. Now this is for attribute editing. Given this single image of Einstein, we generate this, and then we can reduce or increase the age of the person. You can see the background is well maintained and only localized things are getting changed. Similarly, you can do edits in the paintings. You generate some pointillism painting of that person and increase the smile or reduce the smile. This is for hairstyles. This was very challenging case because it's like latte art, and you have to preserve all the other things and just localized edits you have to do, and the edit should also blend well with the same style of the image. This is for 2 persons. We composed these 2 and just edited the first person because you have V1 star, V2 star. Just edit the W for V1 star. Now you can change the attributes of only one person. Okay, so next we'll talk about image in painting. Any questions till now? Yeah, because it's a very difficult style. It's very far from the real images. The model was trained on real cropped up faces. So it's very easy for the model to kind of mess up other things in this image because it's the domain of this image is very far away. So when you are changing the hairstyle, all the other things should be preserved, but in this domain. So that is getting happen, and even the identity is well preserved. So.
Can specifically change the vector you set now for hair and like
Yeah, that is true. That you can do, but so you know training and test distribution kind of thing. When you are training a machine learning model, there is some training distribution on which you train. If you give some image from very random distribution, for example, if you are trained on real images, and if you give painting image to classify, it will fail because there is large domain gap. So there is a large domain gap between the real images that we use to train the model and this painting image, but still it works for this. So it does generalize. Yeah.
How do you enforce the background to stay the same?
We don't enforce.
then
We don't enforce.
So it's naturally staying the same,
Yeah.
just editing
The W.
accordingly.
Yeah, yeah.
If you would have changed the embedding with the same, let's say, prompt, would it have still generated the same background?
Can you repeat? So the seed remains the same during the generation.
The what?
Seed, initial noise that you start with. And it's DDIM generation, so the initial noise kind of controls the layout. You don't add noise at each of the time steps. Yeah, so the So the next thing is image in painting. The task is like this: given this image and a mask of a person or whatever object, you want to fill in the information such that it nicely blends with the background. Okay, it can be much more complex also. You can give a mask of the full bench and you can recover it. So it has lots of applications in image editing, and you might have seen magic brush kind of tools in mobile phones. It does incorporate something like this. So this is the architecture of latent diffusion model. I think last time it was discussed. Was it discussed? Yeah, sure. So we can tweak the same model, text to image model, for in painting also. So this is the diffusion process happening here, right? You will take the image, pass to the VAE, get the latent, noise it, and then you have a denoising process and then decode it. Okay. Earlier we were passing the text conditioning from here. Okay, like whatever text you want to generate. But instead of that, we want for in painting, what we will pass is the background image and the mask overlaid on top of it. Something like this, masked background image. So this is additional conditioning to perform the generation, right? So the full thing is getting generated, but it is conditioned on this one. So here we will take the full image, mask the region, pass it through some image encoder. It can be the same unit or same your VAE encoder, get its embedding, and then perform cross attention for all times. And we can train this diffusion model for this task, and later during inference you just give the mask image, it will generate, fill in the holes in that. How can we train this? Like what kind of data set do we need to train the in-painting model? With and without mask images. Okay, so you need these two pairs. Okay.
And even if you have some transparent, you can sort of just overlay a obstruction and then
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
supervise it.
So yeah, that's another interesting way to go about it, because it's difficult to get these pairs. What you can do is actually have lots of real images, cut paste objects on top of that, and remove that object. So you have pairs of with object and without object. You have the mask also. Yeah, so you can use that mechanism to train this. So these are some examples from latent diffusion model paper itself. They just trained from scratch. There's your stable diffusion kind of architecture. Now you can see it works really well. So you can see this pattern, which was very difficult, completely hidden, but it recovered taking the information from both the sides. Good part is the full thing is getting generated. Earlier in painting models used to only generate this part and cut paste. That does not blend well. Here the full image is getting generated, conditioned on this thing. And this also shows the capability of diffusion model as a generative model. So it can generate very realistic things while preserving the backgrounds really well. Okay. So this is another work from our lab where we analyze the mirror reflections in diffusion models. Okay. So this is stable diffusion 2. If you give this prompt, perfect plane mirror reflection of a swivel chair and something, so the model generates like this. Okay. This is the chair which is coming nicely, but we asked for a mirror reflection. So it generated some form of mirror behind, but there is no reflection. So mirror reflections are like very challenging problem in generation, in the sense it should follow the 3D geometry. Wherever the object is, you should reflect it in the 3D space and then generate, which is very challenging. So if you naively prompt these stable diffusion models for this task, they cannot generate realistic reflections. So, oops, I think, yeah. So yeah, current text to image models fail to generate plausible reflections. Now what we did in this work is formulate the reflection generation as an in-painting problem. Okay. So what do we want to in-paint? We want to in-paint the mirror, and the mirror should generate the reflection of the object. Okay. So this is the input image. You masked out this mirror region, and this is the mask for mirror, right? And we will train an in-painting model to fill in the mask, taking the information from all the other regions. As we have seen, a diffusion model can do that nicely, right? Taking information from other regions and fill in whatever is masked. But this is much more challenging. You actually want to have consistent 3D geometry of the scene in the reflection. Okay. So if you use existing models, stable diffusion in painting or power paint is another state of the art model, you give this input to that in painting model, it generates something like this. So you can see there are clearly some issues. The chair is rotated here. Here again the pose is different, and even it changed the chair. Right? In this one you can see this something new is generated, and this is again wrong. So these models hallucinate, right? It is not 3D consistent. Whereas this is the output for Mirrorverse, the R method, and it can generate kind of very consistent mirror reflections. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So it should fill something which is plausible. Like till this point, it should generate meaningful, and after that, it will repeat whatever is looks plausible. It generates something behind this part you are saying. That's okay, right? It should be consistent with only this region, whatever is visible to us. Apart from that, it can hallucinate. It has to hallucinate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I will tell. So that is in the training mechanism of the model. I'll explain how the model works. Okay. So first of all, again, if you want to train such a setting, you need a paired data. It's difficult to get the paired data. Even we cannot do cut paste thing here because it should be geometrically consistent. So Ankit and us kind of went into the synthetic world and generated a synthetic data. So this is a Blender setup, which is a synthetic simulator, which is a simulator where you can put objects and render them across from any viewpoint. And you can actually put virtual mirrors there, reflect the object and take an image. So we did something like that. So there are lots of mirrors that we have in our database, 66,000 3D objects, floor textures, what kind of textures you want to put on floor, and HDRI map, the background maps. Okay. We pass all of them through the Blender, this thing. So it requires a lot of engineering that goes inside, how to place these objects, how to place the mirrors such that there is consistent reflection, where to place the camera, lighting, and so on and so forth. And finally, your renderer gives you RGB, semantic map, depth, and normal maps. Because it's full 3D simulator, so you can extract whatever 3D properties you want to extract. So we extracted depth and normals as well. So these are some examples from the data set. You can see this bag reflection, this human reflection, statue reflection, and so on. Now with this data, we trained up in-painting model. Okay. So this is the in-painting model. You have a generation branch. the standard generation thing. You start from noise, denoise multiple times to generate something. It is conditioned on the text as well. Now we have another conditioning branch. That conditioning branch takes your background image along with the mask information. You have the mask, you have the background, you concatenate them. You have a full this 64 cross 64 cross 10 channel input. This conditioning branch is a copy of original generation branch, and this is learnable. You extract the intermediate features and directly add them to the features of the generation branch for all the layers, and then you put the loss in the end. Now, as you mentioned, how does the model understands the depth or actual 3D properties? We condition it on the depth map as well, so which understands the object, how far it is from the mirror. Okay, so this Q was actually very helpful in generating 3D consistent reflection. If you don't put this as additional conditioning, the model kind of hallucinates more. We tried with normal also, but normal was not that great. Yeah, any questions in this? Okay, so this shows you another idea of using synthetic world to generate data and then solving a real problem from there. Because in synthetic world you can get very easily get 3D annotations. So you extract the annotations from annotated data from there and fine tune your model or train the model for new tasks. Yeah, I think there is one part which I skipped. Yeah, this is a reference condition in painting. So till now we have seen in painting like completely filling something in that. We have seen mirror in painting where we actually want to reflect the object very nicely with 3D consistency. This is another area which is becoming very popular, which is reference condition in painting. The idea is this is the image, you have a mask. If you just pass it to any in painting model, it will fill in something with which is plausible, but I want to fill it with this particular toy. How to insert the toy in the region. So again, it's similar to personalization in some aspect. You want to preserve the identity of this thing, but the challenge is it's a single image thing, and you want to preserve the background also, which was not there in personalization. So it should generate something like this. So this was a paper came in CVPR 2023. After that, lots of works have been published around this line. So this is the training of standard in painting model. Okay, you have the noisy image. You denoise it at each time step, and along with that, you also pass the masked input image because you want to get the context from the borders and then fill in. Now, if we want to do reference condition in painting, something like this, I want to insert this object, right? So we want a mechanism to inject that object in the diffusion process, right? Any thoughts? How can we do that? Mm-hmm.
Replace it with the object in the painting that you don't know.
Can you repeat?
You get the painting of both the images.
Mm-hmm.
Then you specifically find the painting of that object, the object of target, replace with the desired object that will get in, and then you generate the image.
So that replacement should happen inside this diffusion model, outside this? Any idea? YT to which image? Yeah, if you do that, then it will be like, look, so YT is the complete generation branch. It's starting from completely denoised, noised map and iteratively getting denoised, which should be your final output. So if you naively replace it with your toy image, it will distort the toy image, or maybe it will just generate the same thing for all times. Toy without the background. Okay.
So what is the objective here?
So we want to generate one particular cat, for example, this toy in this region. Okay, during the input.
In the second image, the reference, do we know which object we have to put it, or like we only give the input image? Like we know
This
the
one?
box coordinate, or we don't know?
Not dog's coordinate, we know the box coordinate.
Like we don't know that dog's one. Like, so if there are two objects,
You can assume that is tightly cropped.
I take out only one.
Yeah, yeah. Think of it as a conditioning.
Conditioning, yeah. So conditioning you can
Okay,
like
yeah. How will?
other condition you can add is
Correct. So you can add a dog conditioning in this, right? But again, for that you need a paired data. You need this, this, and this that you don't have. Can we do it without paired data? Self-supervised? Cut pasting is one thing, but it will not have shadows and everything. Then it will look like cut pasted even during the generation. Self-supervised mechanism, you have a single image. Let's say, how can we use the same image?
If you cut paste the input, then use the image as the
Cut paste.
basically the input you are having, that is the fake one without the shadows and all.
Mhm.
So keep it not perfect, right? And then you have the perfect thing as the output.
Yeah, but then it's like a shadow generation kind of thing that you are.
Not shadow generation. So for example, you cut out the cat, for example. You want to inpaint the cat now.
Yeah.
Instead of inpainting the doll, we're taking the doll image as the initial one and we are inpainting the cat. Something like that.
I see.
Reversing it.
I see. Yeah, that you can try. They did with just a single image.
Yeah, just cut the embedding from the object, and after the diffusion model takes input, replace the cat embedding with that object embedding, and then reproduce the image.
Yeah, but which embedding space are we talking about?
So we can, input can be the cutting image.
Input can be the?
The cutting image, that is the image with the cat removed, and condition should be the cat. The output should be the image with cat.
Yeah, that's what. You crop the image, you get the cat. You apply some augmentations so that it does not just cut paste. So you apply some flipping, color jitter and stuff, pass it through a clip encoder and use that information. So and this is a full self-supervised thing. You are doing it with a single image. And you don't even need a cat ka segmentation mask. You can cut any region of the image and do this.
Here we are replacing the cat with what?
With cat.
With cat itself. Yeah. So you are removing the cat and asking the model to generate the cat.
But you will actually do some augmentation. on
Yeah.
that so that it's,
Yeah.
and then it will generate to a different object as well.
Yeah.
Like it will generate
Yeah.
to a different object. Like
That's the good part. Because there is no signal of cat as such here.
yeah, yeah.
So these are some outputs. You can see very nicely the model changes the pose of the object, generates some shadows also. You can see here also the shadows are being nicely generated. The object looks well blended in the scene. It's not looking like a cut paste thing. So even like you can do weird things like putting a car on a popcorn tub. Yeah, again this is for the cat. Right.
How is the cutting done?
Cutting done as in?
How do you remove the object? Like, do you use another model for that? Or?
In these examples?
Yeah.
So again the control is with the user. So user will just draw a stroke.
Okay.
I want to draw something here. Or I will want to put something here. Yeah, this we discussed already. Yeah, so this is another work where we extended the in-painting kind of thing, but for humans. Humans are much more challenging because they have very varied poses, different identities, different clothing, and it should still look like a human, like not with 3 hands or something. So how can we do that, right? So the setup here is given a background image and a text prompt and a photo of that person that you want to insert. Something similar to that cat that we want to insert. But we don't have ground truth here. We cannot cut paste the object. And we don't have the mask also. So it becomes a question very challenging, like how to define the mask where the person can sit. So it's more like a discriminative task. Given this image in the prompt, first you have to, as a human, you will localize where is the sofa, how will the person sit on the sofa, how will the mask look like, and then you will give that to the model. Then it will in paint. But we don't have that. We don't have the mask. How can we do that? Exactly. So now the question is, can we learn the mask automatically? Right? Yeah. So in this work, what we did was we proposed a method that first optimizes for the mask, learns the mask given the background and text prompt, and then realistically in-paints a human inside that. Okay. So something like this. You pass it through our model, text to place. you get that person realistically inserted, sitting. You can see the size of the person is like well matching with the sofa, and it's looking very realistic. Okay. So we decompose the problem into two sub-problems. One is prediction of semantic mask, and the second is in-painting. In-painting will be subject-driven or reference-driven in-painting, as we saw earlier. But the main crux is how to do the semantic mask prediction. One naive way to go about it is do a supervised training. Okay. What you can do is you have a data set of a human sitting in some backgrounds. You apply SAM, segment out the humans, in-paint the background region. Okay. You have the person image in painted background, and then you will train with this pair something similar to the earlier one. And the model will predict the mask. Model can predict the mask given the background image and the ground truth mask. But it requires a large pre-training. The previous models that we saw requires like 8 GPUs for 1 or 2 weeks of training to get that. We want to do it without pre-training. Can we do it at inference time or very small training like Dream Booth? You just train for 30 minutes and get the output. Okay. And the next part is if you do supervised training, it is limited to the training categories. For example, currently we are just showing for humans, but our method kind of extends to chair, sofa, and anything what you want. Just give it in the prompt, it will work. So if you train in a supervised setting, you will not generalize to new objects. So how can you do that? So what we thought of is using the scene generation priors from text-to-image model. So text-to-image models, or text-to-image diffusion models specifically can generate very realistic images, right? You give any prompt, it will generate anything. You say a person sitting on sofa or doing something, it understands what is the sofa, what is the background, and it kind of generate natural looking images. So can we extract some information from there for learning the mask? And we want to do that in an optimization kind of framework. Given a background image, I just want the mask for that without a requirement of pre-training. And then this obviously will generalize to new categories. You just change the prompt, like a dog sitting in the room. It should learn the mask for the dog. So I'll not go into the details of the method. It's a little bit involved, but I will just tell you the gist how it happens. So we have this prompt and a background image as input. Okay, this is pre-trained text-to-image diffusion model. Then we parameterize the mask where the person has to sit as a set of Gaussian blobs. Okay, so you can think of this as a set of Gaussians, 2D Gaussians tied to each other, and when you render them, it will look like this, right? Because Gaussian has a peak in between and then dulls down. So if you have multiple Gaussians together, it will look something like this. Now what are the parameters for Gaussians? In this case, mean and variance, and you have few more parameters because you have a chain of Gaussians, right? How far are they? How are they rotated? So that comes under the covariance matrix. Okay. So those are the parameters. If you optimize those parameters, you will see different kind of masks being generated here. So what we did was we used something called SDS loss, which is like little bit involved concept. What it does is it takes the information from text-to-image model and it can help you compare an image and a text. If image and text are close by, your SDS loss will be low. If image and text are very far away, it will give you high values. For instance, yeah, so that's why you are using text-to-image model. So if you give some text and you have some image of the same concept, you denoise it, and if the text and image are matching, the denoising loss will be less. Okay, the model is fixed; it's not getting trained. You are using it as a loss function. You can check Dream Fusion paper that talks specifically about SDS loss. Little bit more involved, but the idea is you can use it as a loss function between text and image. And we use that loss and optimize this mask. As the mask is constrained with the Gaussian blobs, it cannot become the full image, cannot become the full white mask. It will have it is constrained, like spatially it will just capture only few pixels. We optimize for few iterations and then it kind of generates the mask following this prompt on this background. Okay. That was the first step, getting the mask. Now you have the second step where you want to insert the person in that mask. You have the background, you have the mask, you say a photo of that person sitting on sofa. it will generate some random person, right? You want to generate your specific person. So what we perform something similar to precise control.
Sorry for interrupting. So this mask, it doesn't exactly reflect a person, right? Or it's just like we just want to, I mean, like give a region where the person.
Yeah, so it's not pixel perfect mask.
Okay.
It's a little bit coarse mask. So you can see it looks little bit bigger than the human region. Okay. So the goal is if you give pixel perfect mask, these in painting models struggle. And if you give a bounding box mask, which is the loosest form of giving a mask, then it will change the background also. So this parameterization of a mask, which is set of a Gaussian blobs, is a very nice intermediary between both the things, bounding box and a pixel perfect mask. So we have done that ablation and we found having this kind of representation actually is very helpful. Yeah, then you do something like precise control, given 1 or 3 to 5 images of that person, learn some embedding, and then you say a photo of that sitting on sofa. Instead of doing generation, now you are doing in painting. So in the in painting prompt, you modify the prompt with a V embedding, and then it will generate that person. Sorry, can you repeat? It's coming in the mask. If you have different covariants, the mask will look different and the output will look different. So you are saying how sensitive is the in painting on the covariance. So yeah, we have done some ablations on that and it's in the paper, you can check. So if you have very coarse mask, it will put the person, but it will change the background also that you don't want to do. Yeah.
Can you explain how you put the mask?
How?
How you put the mask at the precise person?
Yeah, so that's the optimization process here happening. So you initially randomly assign some Gaussians in the image space, but those Gaussians are given by some parameters. You update those parameters using this SDS loss. Okay.
So you put a prompt and the
Background image
background image.
and this thing, and this is learnable. It gets optimized. Yeah.
Based on the prompt, it will try to put the mask at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I say get, then it goes to
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
We have some outputs for that. So these are some interesting outputs. You can see this is the same podium. You can generate, insert new people there realistically. It kind of understands the occlusion also that is coming from the in-painting model itself. Like the in-painting model is very good. We don't train the model. It kind of generates the object behind this thing. And this is again very interesting example where yeah, 1 second. Yeah. Right. As the mask is loose, you can also do generate different pose variations of the same object. If you have pixel perfect mask, you cannot generate pose variations. So you see here, this person now he is sitting in different pose variations. But look,
By wearing the seat.
just by wearing the suit. But the location is coarsely same. So that is the advantage of having blob based coarse mask representation. You can put the person at different places, like on a bed, on a sofa. Mask moves towards that, and then you can insert a person there. You can even put two people. First inserting one person, and then optimizing for another mask with an additional constraint, like the Gaussian mask of these two should be far away. They should not collapse. So then you can insert two person. You can also insert other objects, as I mentioned. It generalizes, does not overfit to that category. So you can put a sofa, chair, a piano, and a beanbag.
They are also removing the existing objects.
Is it? Yeah, like sometime, yeah, you can see maybe this pillow is changed because it comes under the mask region. But that's the idea, like you want to have have a mask in such a manner like it's as tight as possible, but not the pixel perfect mask. So it's not perfect. You will see some of the issues, but more or less it preserves the background really well. Yeah. Any questions? Overlapping masks. Yeah, so if you overlap the masks, it will, during the in-painting process, it will generate a single object in that. So for in-painting here, we are doing it iteratively. Insert one object and insert another object. Yeah, so on top of if you put a mask, it will distort the previous person, right? Yeah, so this is another application, depth prediction. Given these input images, we want to predict the depth of these images. So depth prediction is a very challenging and important problem in 3D vision because depth gives you it's the first version of 3D information. Right? Images are just 2D pixels. The depth map shows, like the red thing is the closest to camera and the blue thing is the farthest away. It just tells you the distance of those objects in the 3D space. Yeah, this is monocular depth. So it's super challenging. There is some uncertainty, but still you want to get it, how much you can get it. So as humans we can do, like even if I close one of my eye, I know how far are the objects. So this monocular depth estimation, as you rightly pointed out. And once you have the depth and the color, you can lift it to 3D. So these are not 2D images, these are point clouds. So these are 3D points in the 3D space, the colors being assigned with the input image, and the Z value is obtained from this image. So this is another paper which came in CVPR, I think it's 24, Marigold. The idea is you want to use diffusion model, but for depth prediction, which was like more of a discriminative task. Mostly people were using standard supervised training kind of mechanism, not a generative method to do that. So here they proposed a latent diffusion based approach, training with only 50,000 examples and beating all the baselines that are trained with like millions of examples. Right? So the idea here is you have a latent diffusion unit, right? It denoises the images. Here the distribution that we want to learn is the distribution of depth images. Because that's the output. Whatever is the output of diffusion model, that distribution you are trying to model. So here the output is the depth image distribution. Now you want to condition the generation on the input RGB image. Right? So you have a depth image, you pass it through your VAE encoder, get the latents, add noise, and then you will denoise it. But the denoising process is happening with the condition of RGB image. If we see this in comparison to in-painting, this was complete noise, that was your masked background image. That's an additional conditioning. In text-to-image generation, that was the text, this was complete noise. So this is just a swap of what is the input and what is the output. Usually we think of output of latent diffusion model as RGB image. Here they output directly the depth maps. So they are learning the distribution of depth map, but conditioned on the RGB image. And this is not training from scratch. It is like they use stable diffusion pre-trained model and fine-tuned with just 50,000 images. And those images also were generated from synthetic environment, something like the mirror dataset that we saw. Blender. Yeah, Blender like that. So you can see this is some synthetic room. You get the accurate depth for this one, and you use that synthetic data to train this model. So this was a big breakthrough in the sense for depth, getting actual data is challenging. Really real labeled data, and people have acquired whatever data and trained with lots of synthetic plus real data. Still this method beats with training with only synthetic data and very small amounts of synthetic data.
It is similar to the mirror problem.
Yeah, but
We are
in
predicting the mirror part, but here we are imprinting the 3D part on the 2D image.
Yeah, so here we are predicting the depth map. The output distribution is different. There, still it was RGB. Here it's the depth map. So, so it's the straightforward thing. You have the prediction and you have the noise that you added. You compare the noises, backprop, and finally fine tune your diffusion model. During inference, what you will do is you will have an input image. You will start with some completely random noise. You want to denoise it to generate a depth map, but the depth map should follow this image. So you extract the embeddings for that image and then you condition them. So here the conditioning mechanism is very simple. You just concatenate them. You have the noisy latents, you have the latents for your input image, you concatenate them and denoise iteratively. And finally you will pass the denoise thing to the latent decoder. It will give you the depth. Right. So, yeah.
Latent encoder and decoder are
These are VAE encoder decoder. Pre-trained
like
frozen.
output and input for those are color images only, na?
Yeah, so it works for depth also.
So this VA was trained on depth images.
No, real images. So they use pre-trained VAE. But the thing was the VAE was, original VAE even, that was trained on 5 billion images. So it has seen everything.
It's a vector quantized VE, not
Yeah, so I think in this one they use VAE, the standard VAE, but both versions are equally good.
Oh, even for the depth estimation decoder, that also. they
That's a
train
pre-trained
on that. Okay, the real data.
real data.
Okay, even RGB and then both.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the great insight ki even though it is trained on real data, you can adapt it to generate depth maps because they look very close to real images in some sense. There are borders and edges, everything like that. So you can think of this as some artist style image, right?
Okay, so the decoder is not trained on depth maps. It's
No.
actually trained on real.
Real data. That's why they even fine-tuned the latent diffusion model trained on real data just with small number of synthetic images. Yeah. So now I will quickly just tell one or two advanced topics which are coming up, like diffusion image transformers, which is a new architecture that came in 2023, but it is becoming mainstream nowadays because it scales really well. The previous generation of models have a unit-based diffusion, whatever we see in latent diffusion models, but now everything is moved to transformer-based diffusion models because of their scalability. So these are some images from ImageNet generated by DIT model. They are called DITs for short.
Why can units can't be scaled to this level?
Yeah, so because units have that convolutions, and the convolutions, in some sense, convolutions have less number of parameters and less flexibility to adapt based on the input data. Transformers are much more generalized. If you have more compute and more data, it has shown in principle like you can achieve much better performance with transformers. As you increase the number of data points, the transformers will keep on increasing, but connects will saturate somewhere.
But even in that unit,
You had, but it was little bit mix of both.
yeah.
This is completely transformer. No convolutions. Very simple thing. You have seen VITs, vision transformers. Architecture looks very similar to that. You have a noisy latent. You patchify and then you denoise it. You have some layer norm and other operations. And this model will finally predict the noise and variance. How we predict in the standard diffusion also. In standard diffusion, we keep this as fixed. We don't predict this. We only predict the noise, whatever we add. The mean of the noise, not the variance of the noise.
What is the different noise and variance?
Yeah, covariance of the noise that you add. But in standard diffusion, we keep it as fixed. We define the.
How do you pass the condition?
Yeah, so the conditioning is this branch, label, which can be your text prompt or even other things like segmentation map and so on. You have the time step and you do what is called ADINE operation. So you scale and shift so these are the image tokens left side going up and you modulate the features with gamma and beta. So these gamma and beta are dependent on label. So there's nothing complex happening there. It's similar to batch norm. You will multiply the features by gamma and add a beta to them. That's all. So these features are now kind of adapted to this gamma and beta. Okay. And now you can stack so many such layers. It's full transformer, like multi-head self-attention is happening, and then you have a feed forward followed by that, a standard transformer block, and then you can generate, like you can train the full architecture with multiple. So this is a scaling graph. On the x-axis you can see the training compute, and on the y-axis you can see the FID. FID is the metric to measure the generation quality, lower the better. S, B, L and XL are different model families, small, base, large and extra large. You can see as you increase the model size, the performance keeps on improving. Numbers as in? Yeah, so it's like S by 8, S by 4, reduce the number of self-attention heads, attention heads. So they did a very extensive scaling study and showed like as you increase the number of parameters in the model, it keeps on improving the generation. So hence all the models that are recent like Stable Diffusion 3 and Flux models, even video generation models, use this as the backbone, DIT models. Instead of unit-based convolutions. So yeah, you can use it for video generation. Like the Sora model was based on this. You have so video is a stack of frames. You have k frames. You want to learn the distribution of videos. So you will noise them and then denoise the full batch together of all the frames, and you will be able to generate a video. To do that, they have an input video. You have a video VAE, for instance, that will compress that into the latent representation, and then you will flatten it, because the VITs take the flattened patched representation, right? You can put a VIT or in this case a DIT on top of that, noise and denoise, to learn the distribution of this. So you can generate like really good videos. So this is 1 minute video generated by Sora. So now it has moved like so much. There are so many works which are better than this, but still this was a big thing at the time. You can also use the same DIT model to generate 3D, single image to 3D. So this is a recent paper called CAT 3D, where you give, so the first thing which was static is the first input image, and now your model generates the full 3D. So you can move around the camera and see different variations of that. This is again possible because it is trained on large scale 3D data and the architecture is DIT. So in 3D what you want to do is you have, let's say this is the scene, 3D scene, okay? You want to generate, you have some input images of that scene, like image 1, image 2, image 3, and you want to generate the other images. If you are able to do that, you have the 3D. In some sense. If you have enough number of multiple views, you can reconstruct the 3D. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, so depth is a like very easier 3D problem, the first 3D problem, but getting the full 3D geometry with color and appearance, that's the most challenging thing.
So there also we can do that, like have synthetic data with depth data as well, pressure encoder on both, and get the output 3D image.
Yeah, so what do you mean by 3D image? If you predict the depth, that is fine. If you predict multi-views, as in this case,
Like the one where in a single 2D image you are predicting how it looks in 3D.
yeah, so there we were just predicting the depth map. And the 3D you saw that had lots of holes, because it's not the full 3D. It's just a very sparse projection of 3D. Here you want the actual 3D so that you can move around the camera. You can't see any holes in this, right? Even if you do camera viewpoint change.
So it is same architecture or
Different. This is a DIT architecture. That's what I am telling. The DIT is now becoming the backbone of all these things. So very simple thing. You have few tokens in DITs, like we have tokens, transformers. So some tokens are for the input views and the other tokens are for the predicted views, which are the target views. For input views, you have the input latent, actual latent, and for the to be predicted views, you have complete noise. And you denoise the pink ones conditioned on the blue ones, and you get these outputs. Then you decode, you have now views from whatever angle you condition this model. So this is trained on large scale 3D data, multi-view data. And once it is trained, you just give it 3 to 5 images of a scene. It will generate novel views in one shot. You can also use DITs to perform something like this, text to motion generation. So motion space is very different. It's not, human motion space is very different. It's not pixel generation. So you parameterize the human body with some joints and the distance between them. So it becomes a flattened vector. So you learn a diffusion model on that vectorized space and you condition that on the text prompt. So this is the simple architecture. Again, you have a transformer, you have the key points or the joints of the human body, and you denoise the joints at each time step, conditioned on the text prompt and time step. So the same transformer architecture, here it is used for human motion generation. Finally, you can,
It's like pose estimation, but it's predicting what will be the next pose, right?
yeah, pose generation, like sequence of poses. Yeah. So it is also used in AlphaFold 3. So in so the problem for AlphaFold is, given a sequence or a string of proteins, you want to estimate the 3D shape, how the protein will fold based on the interaction forces between each other, and how any drug will latch on top of that. How will the drug adapt itself as per the protein shape? That is definitely helpful in drug discovery, and how effective the drug will be. So estimating the 3D geometry of protein, people have modeled it as a diffusion process. You start with random structure and denoise it multiple times, conditioned on the input sequence of the DNA. And now the model can generate the complex protein structures. So the diffusion as a concept is becoming very powerful, and it can learn any distribution you throw at it with enough data and proper architecture. That's why recently there are some works in integrating diffusion in large language models, because it is very fast in that sense. In large language models, you do auto-regressive generation, one token after another. Here you can split the full thing together. So people are trying to combine these two things. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
I mean, it's just like slightly out of topic, like last time. So, can you give suggestions like how to choose the research topic and how to like focus on protein, how to address the research topic?
Yeah, so as Joseph also mentioned, you should read the recent papers. So let's say you are interested in human motion generation. See what all papers are there in CVPR, NeurIPS and stuff, and see what is the lacking thing in those papers. Sometimes they give it in the limitation section, or sometimes you can directly guess, this will not work in some cases. Even if that is not obvious, just clone the code and run it. You will find some cases where it fails. So do you see, you can then figure out if it is a pattern across all the models. If that is the pattern, every model is failing in that, then you have a problem to solve. And then you have to do the other analysis, like whether that will fit in your budget, compute budget, time budget and everything. So yeah.
And how to take care of, like, the field is moving very fast, right? Like many people are working on the same problem.
Yeah.
How to
I also don't have answer for that. Yeah. So now there are good tools, you can use them to summarize papers and just don't read them fully. Just ask it to summarize and read, skim through them.
There is no midterm presentation today. It will be on first day.
It recorded for only 5 minutes, I think.